It's a long journey, but it's repetitive in its mechanical aspect.
I don't think you would sit around and be oohing and ahhing over your own self. That's just your new normal scenario now. So wherever you are is your normal. There's no reason to necessarily, I mean, it's cool to be an aspirant, I guess, but it's also not something to worry about. I think Carl always said that a lot. Don't worry about it. Don't, because then we block ourselves
Just set
from,
motion and let it go.
yeah, we block ourselves from whatever's really supposed to come in by focusing on something that's not, we shouldn't be worrying about anything.
Yeah, and it blocks your mental channel, if you will. It's just like I'm going to jump to something else, but it's similar in a sense. You know, or at least it used to be this way. People, they're busy and then they want to sit down and they want to read a book or something that they want to do. They sit here and all of a sudden they start to read, and then 1,000 things come through their mind that are just kind of show up and when they're trying to read. And what that is those are the 1,000 things that you thought about, you wanted to do, you should do. And those are unresolved and they're floating around in the mental aura here, just waiting to get recognized again. And so when you sit down to read something, then they all show up. And the only point that I'm making here is these things, you created these thought patterns, they need resolutions. That was part of what you were doing. I got to do this, I got to do that. And they're still sitting there waiting because you've had other stuff, you've had busy days or whatever. And it's the same concept I'm saying is once you've experienced it and once you've got that, because there's lots of little movements, and because you got to work all the way up those 7 levels before you get completed with that to where you can get a grand initiation. You have all this little stuff and you put all this other stuff in place that's just everyday crap, but it's still there and it's still obstructing some thought patterns. And so the same thing is, okay, well, now I've got this and I'm proud of it. Then you've obstructed, you're not going any further because you're hanging on to whatever you've got. It's the same principle no matter what. We're electromagnetic creatures. We send out our own thoughts and then they circle around us until we resolve them. Or we put something in place that we want this, and this is all I want is a red dress. I don't want a yellow one, or I don't want a green one. Well, then I don't get a green. Maybe it was supposed to be coming to me or something. In other words, or you keep your future clear, just feed in the stuff and let it do its work.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know.
Oh, that's our classic line. Believe me, we don't know what we don't know, and
And then all of a sudden you know something, and then maybe you don't, but it seems like maybe you do.
yeah.
And then, I don't know, but uh, you can't believe that you would be able to understand the books at some point, though. Even though you don't understand the books when you're reading it, you can't believe that you'll understand it through life living
Over time. Yeah.
later
Right.
somehow. So all the questions that we end up having, they get answered, but it's not, but it's lived.
Right. Well, and it comes in a form that we don't see as valid normally. We got to produce something here. In other words, to interact with everybody else. Okay. 2 and 2 equals 4. And if you don't believe it, I can write down 2 and 2 equals 4. Now that we can convey to somebody. But when you talk about your chakras dancing around, okay, to somebody, that's not tangible enough unless you're in the back of some x-ray machine or something and it starts dancing, would be the only tangible way. In other words, you're dealing with so much realm of intangibility that you can't convey that to a lot of people. Because they're going to think you're nuts. An example. And I'm very careful about using any special skills that might be there. Okay, I don't want to get tied up in being here any longer than I have to, and I don't want to leave any residue. Okay, so I don't play with special skills most of the time. Okay, but there was something that was going on, it involved another person, and I wanted to know, it was a health issue, and I wanted to know what it was and how it was related to some given issues. So, and I don't normally do this, and I probably didn't even know I could do this, except that it was important enough and not frivolous. And so I wanted to see a certain part of their physical form in the etheric and what was going on. Okay. And because I already knew what the individual looked like, I had the image, just like in Life and Teachings. Remember when the sender or whoever the guy was, who white-haired guy who died?
Oh, Chandra Sen, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And as soon as he had died and somebody, a group started to gather, I knew exactly what was happening, because they were going to bring him back. And the reason you needed them is because each one of them in their psyche had a vision of him in their heads, because they know him, so they could pull him back. Did I say that in a way you can understand? Okay, he was already in their consciousness, so they had the capacity, those people, to bring him back, which they did. Brought him back to life. And then he was only there for a very short period of time and he disappeared. And then 5 days later or something, he shows up and he's young and he's renewed. Okay. But the point was that I'm making is I knew they were bringing these people all showing up because they all had him and his image that they knew him as in their consciousness, so they could pull him back on this side, because he said it was getting pretty dark and he was happy he'd been pulled back. So the point that I'm making is I had already a visual image of what I was concerned about and wanted to know more about it. And so unbeknownst to me, I had the ability to see that image in the etheric. And I could see exactly what physically health problems were and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, if I go tell somebody that, most people are going to think I'm nuts, or that I'm imagining it, or I'm a little loopy, because they're not going to understand that I have that capability. I don't flaunt those kinds of things at all to people. And I don't misuse it, and I rarely ever use this kind of skill, even if I have it. Just like DK says, well, you can do such and such right now, but you don't know it. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of people who can't understand that that would be a capacity that another human being would have, especially if they don't have it. If they have it, then they don't have any trouble understanding what you're saying. Okay. But for the rest of them, it's you're just a nut. I think we talked about this a little earlier. Is that people don't, you know, they just think you're out to lunch or you've been, you know, changing your chemistry or what. But all that ability is out there. So you generally have a little more of a idea or capacity probably than you use. Although I saw you smile, Kim, so I know that you see some of that stuff. And I think the two sets of books right now that are probably, and there's the Bailey material, she's got what, 20 volumes. So you can certainly choose. And then the Life and Teachings, which is actually time-wise runs in the same track, actually. So their publishing came out in around 1922, 23, and Bailey started in 22, 23. You know, even though I'm not saying their paths crossed or anything, but that's got to be a real, I see that as like a cosmic can opener to your awareness level with Life and Teachings. If you don't get that, but well, I'm sure a lot of people don't because they don't believe it. They don't have the capacity to believe it. You know, for them, life has a lifespan and then a termination. And for these guys, it doesn't. Well, we're so used to this, that which is around us, our solidity, all of that. I mean, where do you go? Where does that journey take you? So it takes you at the third initiation, they say you see the star. Okay, you're on the mountaintop and you see the star off in the distance. Okay, and it's like a star. Very, very bright, darkness all around it. So bright that it makes everything else dark, is kind of the way it's described. And all right, so, well, that's nice concept. We all like stars, don't we? We all like balls of light or whatever are attractive. You know, twinkle, twinkle, little star out there. And what do we go look at the skies when they're clear for? It's to see the stars and so on and so forth. So when we deal with the reflection of a reflection of a reflection that Annie Besant talks about, and this is on the involutionary coming down. Okay, so on that chart and all the little substance or structures. Well, when we go back up, then we are getting closer to the source of the reflection every time we go up, right? Because where we reflected, now we're unwinding that in a sense, except we're not empty like we would have been coming down into the second system initially. Okay, we're loading up, we're building consciousness, we're doing the job that we got to do, but we are moving closer to the light, would be another way of putting it, right? Just pure light until you become that. In other words, that's where you're going, is to being a, what DK talks about as a realized state of being. How about just imagining it as a ball of light that is you and you're fully conscious? Because he says something to the effect that when you get out there, that's when you will get a fixed place or point of being, or the place you're going to be, or whatever, versus Blavatsky telling you that you're a weary pilgrim, but you got no place to stay here. No sooner did you accomplish this great goal we're talking about, than they say, fine, now find another place to go, because it takes a while to get out of here. There's 4 more initiations at that point to go through to get out, but that's where you're headed now. You're headed out somewhere else. And then he does make the remark, you will find your fixed place, or something to that effect. In other words, you'll find a place where you can actually be, and aren't just. And the qualities, one of the qualities he says you will always have is the concept of love, because you were created out of this system, which is love wisdom. So that's the journey from beginning to end, in a sense. I mean, you came in here as dirt. What do they used to say? We are all stardust. We're made from stardust. Okay, you got dirt, and then out of that you end up with the mineral kingdom, the first kingdom, then the astral kingdom, then the mental kingdom, and then you're building in this whole chart that's on that wall. And Annie Besant has a very good tale of how it came about. And some of those books you can get on archive.org. You just download the whole thing if you want to read it on your computer. There's no charge, no fee for it. And I think you have that list somewhere, don't you, Donnie, online?
I'm sure.
One of your websites or whatever has all those links. So you can read Cosmic Consciousness is on there for a free download. Annie Besant's works are all down there, and some of the other books. Not all of them are currently published ones, but you can have access to them at no charge. They augment it, and you know, they've got substantiability about them. So,
well, we talked a bit about experiences and things like that, and I think it's important to note that not everybody's going to have the same experiences, right?
Right.
And so there needs to be, I think, some caution taken with, you know, you see, if you watch YouTube, there are people out there talking about their experiences and stuff. You got to make sure you take that as that person's specific experience and not try to make it yours. Like, don't try to go seeking that experience, because that is probably not for you. You're going to have your own. And then when you have those experiences, you don't clutch them and think, hey, this is it. I've attained spiritual enlightenment and this is how it is, because you're just going to hold your back from the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of got to take it in and shelve it and then move on. But I think it's important to note that when we talk about experiences, that's just the expression of that person's experience, and you shouldn't take it as an expectation that you should somehow attain that same thing. Because what you'll find is you're going to experience something, or you're going to get used. You'll be surprised in the sense of what your experience is, because you might have been thinking it's going to be something different, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, that's not what I was expecting. But
right.
but they know what it is that you need to experience. Yeah.
And each of us is different. We all have a different history. Now I'm going to talk about the soul, the collection of whatever's in there. We all are using different ray structures at different times that give different phenomena. Yeah, and understanding that it is phenomena, basically, and all anything that happens down in these lower three levels is principally what we consider phenomena. And so it comes out. I mean, the walls in this house are phenomena in many respects, in as much as the eye sees light and then decodes it into all of this. Okay. So that, yeah, it's here, but somehow I don't think they've really figured that one out yet, that transition. They call it the hard problem, or they used to, when back a ways, when I think it was the University of Arizona was one of the first ones that started to try to work with all of whatever goes on in all of this and tried to explain it. But that was their hard problem was, well, how do you, knowing that this is coming in as light and we experience it as the wall and the pictures and whatever else, but that is all phenomena. That's why when it first started coming over from the east, the clue, it was always, well, it's just a dream. You see, this is all a dream. And that's what came over from the east in the early 60s with some of the eastern stuff that came over was, and it's an illusion, and so on and so forth. And to some extent, that's accurate. In as much as we reincarnate, and we incarnate, we're human units, and we incarnate into human units with cultural structures and so on and so forth. But I think, first of all, Catholicism, or the church, Christianity, period, when they chose in the counts, it would have been in Constantinople, but they chose that Christ was the only Son of God and there would be no other one, and so on and so forth. I mean, that was a good political decision in terms of controlling the populace. And that we have the church, we stand behind the church, and your way to get to heaven is through us, which is pretty much what they set up at that point in time. But they shut down anything like the concept of reincarnation, because if they kept that, then why would you get too concerned about this lifetime? I got another one to do it. I'll do it next time, kind of thing. So, so we got short-changed on that one. And so, this whole journey and all of that was, they couldn't talk about the Christ journey, how he got to the point where he did to do what he did, because that just had to be simply that, well, he was just born that way, and there was only one of him, and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of it that we didn't get, haven't worked with yet. The next generation, the Aquarian and this Aquarian age, will certainly divulge that we operate on quantum physics. We literally operate on it. It's how we do things. We are the observer. And when I'm going to call so and so is not near the phone, but gets my thought pattern goes through their head when they're out traveling, but I've left a message on their phone or something, then they've gotten that objective. We did that. I made the call. They intuitively responded to it, even though they weren't home. So when they get home and they'll say, oh, well, I was thinking about that guy earlier today. Yeah, well, that's when he was leaving you the message, kind of thing. You know, that is the observer. And so they got quantum entanglements that you can't imagine because you've got 8 billion people sending out thought patterns at the same time. So
Have you? Oh, sorry.
no, because I didn't really.
Have you ever made a call, a telephone call? Say if I'm going to phone you, but suddenly I was speaking. I got Tom's number, and I didn't know how I got it. Have you ever experienced that? I telephoned a friend. I was telephoning a friend of mine, and I ended up connected to this lady that I know just up the road. You know, it was really weird, and I didn't even dial the numbers, but found that we needed to talk to each other.
Yeah.
You
have a lot of
He's laughing.
No, your combination of planets and stuff give you a lot of what I'd call surface phenomena where it's appropriate for your everyday life. Not everybody has that. But everybody's got stuff that's a little different. I programmed out very young, early 20s. I only wanted to know about things that related to me and my family. Don't send me any other information. Part of the reason I did that was because my mentor was open to the whole world, and things she wanted to do and accomplish never got done ever in her lifetime. I don't know that one was more important than the other. I'm not evaluating that way. I'm just saying that you get so overwhelmed with it. And in her life, I saw that, and I didn't want that to be the pattern for my life. So by the time I was 24, I had programmed that don't send me all of this information, only specific things that are directly related to me. But by the same token, like if there's a report being written or an analysis for medical or anything, when they're working on mine, I know it. I go right through all that analysis with them. I know the results of the report. Sometimes, if it's a longer typed one, I get it word for word. But that's related to me, and I'm willing to receive that. But that was just a choice on my part, because I thought, oh God, I don't need the whole world in my head all the time. So everybody's phenomena is different, and it doesn't mean anything other than those particular avenues are open in this given lifetime, because it talks about in any given lifetime, there'll be certain areas of the etheric that will be worked on and further developed. But that doesn't necessarily have any status meaning. It just means in this mix, whatever the combination are for this physical body and this life, and the ray structures that are there, so on and so forth, this particular area in the etheric is being further developed. There has to be some every lifetime somewhere, for it to be cumulative development. So you're not totally lopsided and there's 0 over here. And if that makes sense.
Mm.
And so there's no specific, from our viewpoint, there is no specific analysis that I think we should make that gives us status or tries to take status away from somebody else or whatever. I don't think we are capable and have the perspective from this viewpoint to analyze that. It's like, what was it? The Oracle in the Matrix is home baking cookies. What normally you would expect an Oracle to be sitting there receiving people, reading the Oracle for them, right? Better that they had somebody who had a household and was baking cookies and taking care of the family. So, you can't evaluate in today's world really of where anybody is. We've got a lot of advanced people who are coming in. We have some astrological combinations that are a little more unusual with some of the outer planets, which is great. And that sends a edgy development on more the spiritual realm, if you will. There's going to be a little more activity. Just like some of those transits bounce off your chart and your generational group chart, but they don't bounce off the generation before or the generation behind you. But we're all living here. But the impact to your group is different in some unique ways than anybody else has got at the time.
It's interesting that you said about those that are coming in with, that are going to be slightly different. That I don't know if you've heard of Ryan Montgomery. He's a self-taught hacker, ethical hacker. You'll find him on YouTube, and apparently he was asked by Google to look at the databases and that they've just created, and for some, I don't know if it was true or not, but apparently they closed it down. He found something in there, and it was something to do with AI and integrating with outer space. And it wasn't actually in, how can I explain? Nobody had put it into working order at that time. It was beginning to form itself from there. So they closed it down. Willow, Willow, Willow. He found something in there.
I'm not familiar with that. The only hacker that I know of now is Balls, right?
Who?
Balls. He got up.
No, I've never heard.
No, he's the Canadian young hacker that's on Elon Musk's team. And so the other team that's in there with him, they like him really well. And he's got dark curly hair, whatever, but he was a legitimate hacker. Probably got, I don't know if he was ever incarcerated or not. You might know more than I do, Tom, on that one, but he does make the TV shows now. I mean, he's the information about him. I think it came out on TikTok from one of the guys he's working with that this guy was really great. But he had been of probably the consideration of criminal ilk in terms of his hacking ability, or was caught hacking. I don't know which. Young guy, with the rest of the team. That's the only hacker I know about at the moment, and he's getting a little bit of press. But I think I don't know what AI is, but I think we grew up to where AI is, and it's probably been around for a long time.
Yeah. Well, that's what AI even says to us when they ask. They say, well, it was here. You just got to the point where you can understand it now.
Right. Because let me see, the Fulford says he believes he was called on the phone by a female creation, AI creation. I don't know exactly how to say what he was, but he implies that and that the way he nailed it down was that she didn't have history prior to 1978. She had no history prior to that. He believes that's when she was created. And but that it was like a person. He got a phone call, but it was like it was a person that had been created. But when he tried, and that was just the comments he made. It was 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well, that's pretty out there.
Yeah. Well, and might be, I mean, he wasn't physically in the same room with her, but he got contacted on the phone by a person that he felt that's what it was. And when he tried to get dates and range, that was as far back as it would go. And then there was nothing prior to that. So I don't know. I don't know that it's something we really should be interacting with until we really know what it is. But,
To be perfectly honest, I'm not comfortable with it.
Pardon?
I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because they're nor with that chat GPT or something like that.
I don't know what that. I've never.
That's another AI.
But yeah. I don't think you've got the real generative consciousness. I mean, for us, God is truly within us and is part of us. And that's where we should be sticking with to get what we want done, to accomplish for the complete planet and its position in the solar system. I would think to some extent we have to be holding the solar system back right now. We're the heart center. And I would say it's a pretty damn sick heart.